And welcome on into the Third Round Reversal Fantasy Football Podcast. Brett Malamud here with you, along with Zach Malamud for the ride. Zach, week 14, the final week of the regular season in a lot of leagues. Actually, a playoff week in one of our leagues. But for the most part, last week of the regular season, gearing up for playoffs, trying to fight for those final spots here. How you doing on this stressful and yet so exciting morning?
Yeah, I mean, very stressful in just a couple of leagues, Brett. One specifically that I'm really hoping. I'm down after Thursday night. Just odds against me, but the odds were against me last week, and I made one of those miraculous Monday night miracles happen. So I'm doing all right. Obviously excited for today and some great games on the horizon this Sunday.
Yeah, so just to kind of give the viewers a quick little glimpse to our world here. You and I play in a dynasty league together, as which I am the commissioner of that. Fighting a spot this week to try to get into the playoffs. My team right now, it looks like, is going to be the number one seed in the playoffs. I'm playing against the worst team this week, so probably will get the number one seed. My matchup doesn't matter this week, though. Already clinched a bye. So that league is kind of a wash. But for you, everything rides on this week. In the other week, both you and I are fighting for a playoff spot. I have a team where I have Derrick Henry on a bye, and then I just got Breece Hall ruled out. And so not amazing. And basically, now we're rolling into a week where kind of had to tinker with a lot of different guys and settle with a lineup. So interesting and excited to talk about that league moving forward here.
Yeah, definitely. It could be a long week for you and I, and just hoping and praying that one of those last couple of playoff spots falls in our hands, but we'll see what happens. A lot to get to for this week, though.
Yeah, we'll talk about my ones to watch. Actually, a guy who I picked up in that other league, and so stay tuned for that. But it is Sunday morning, and so we're going to take you right up to kickoff or just before it. Inactives coming out in about an hour or so, and so we kind of know what's going on here. But Zach, let's jump right into what happened the other night. Detroit, they take a big win over the Packers. Dan Campbell going for it on fourth down, I think, was the most notable thing here as far as the football perspective. But let's just talk about the fantasy perspective here. David Montgomery still running over guys, and I think that's been the pretty significant outtake here when it kind of looked like it might start to go the other way. Monty still seems to be, charge here in that backfield.
Yeah, 100%, and really led the way there, and Gibbs as well, getting involved and ends up getting a good number. Both of them do, and when you look at the game overall, it was it was a bit back and forth. You looked early and said, all right, maybe the Lions just kind of comfortably control this one, but give credit to the Packers. They fought back. I mean, you're talking about Josh Jacobs, who had a phenomenal day in the end with 3 touchdowns. I think when you look at the game, it was really more so about the run. The passing game really not too involved. Yes, Goff had a couple passing touchdowns. I mean, Laporta got involved. They had Amon-Ra not with a great day. And Jameson Williams involved as well. It was they really spread the wealth around for Detroit on Thursday night. And then the Packers on the other side, it was really about that run game. And yes, the deep shots in the end that really got the team going. Tucker Kraft had a touchdown as well. But I think overall, you saw from this game how good these running backs are and these running back rooms are. Josh Jacobs on one end, and then Sonic and Knuckles on the other end, and Montgomery and Gibbs, who just continue to roll right now. All 3 of those guys, just insane fantasy options heading into the playoffs next week, Brett.
So do we take anything out of Tim Patrick getting 6 catches on 7 targets for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns?
I don't think so. It's kind of one of those names where you see like I always think of Detroit and I think of like Josh Reynolds from last year, where he just randomly had those great games, and you're like, where is this coming from? A lot of that I think was also J-Mo wasn't playing half the games last year. He was going through injury problems and everything. I think when you look at this game, though, it's kind of like, all right, well, Green Bay is going to guard Amon-Ra. They're going to try and limit the deep shots with a guy like Jameson Williams. So who's sitting right there? I think it's on one end, you had Sam Laporta at tight end. And then on the other side, Brett, it was Tim Patrick. I think it was Tim Patrick's day. And maybe on another day, some teams figure out defensively how to stop that. I think, yeah, that maybe in a dynasty league, you're picking them up. You're just seeing, hey, let me take a chance. But in redraft leagues, I don't think so too much, Brett. Just because I think the options that there are, plus there's so many mouths to feed in this offense in Detroit that it could just be anybody's day. All of a sudden, week 14 was Tim Patrick's day.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how much stock you can put into it. I think that, as far as Jared Goff owner, you were probably excited by at least a 20-point output in what was a tough matchup heading into this one. Green Bay defense has been pretty good all year. And so for him to be able to put out that output was, obviously positive. And then, yeah, I would say as far as the rest of the receiving room for the Lions, it was okay. Obviously, you got Jameson Williams, who ends up having 5 catches for 80 yards, ends up breaking off one long run to kind of save his fantasy day. And then Laporta, he ends up getting, a due day, ends up not scoring a touchdown. And I think that that's sort of where the difference is. But at the tight end position, it's kind of just been, dead. And so you're not really too concerned. I would say they did a really good job, though, at getting after Amon-Ra St. Brown. Only 5 catches for 43 yards. They try to give him an end around 2, which he takes for 10 yards. What is your thought here on Amon-Ra here quickly before we head into the playoffs here?
I think it's. I mean, some people are like really freaking out about it, and I get it. It's hard to have a number 1 wide receiver, and if they're not consistently putting up the numbers, then you're going to be like disappointed. I think when you look at Amon-Ra, though, like they will get him the ball. That's something that like you got to know with Amon-Ra. They're going to get him the ball. This kind of game script, though, I don't think favored a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. They were up early. Then they were continuing with the run game, and the passing game got involved sometimes, but it really was not a big passing game for the Lions. It was more so Green Bay's run defense was not up to par with this Lions run, this rushing offense, and in the end, all of a sudden it turns to a bad day in the end for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and a bad day being 7.8 fantasy points in the end. But Brett, when you look at it, like, yeah, that's 3 straight games with under 10 fantasy points. And that maybe is something more so to worry about rather than the other stuff. But I mean, the target share is amazing. He just needs to get touchdowns. You look at any of the other weeks that he was getting great production. He had a touchdown in I think it was almost 9 straight games, Brett. One game he even had 2. So like that's what you're looking at and saying, all right, well, if he gets into the end zone, then it's a good day. That's most wide receivers. I mean, you're going to get the volume on some of them. You're not going to get the insane volume, I guess, from a guy like Amon-Ra. You'll get the targets. It's just about putting it into high level production. So I think, yeah, the last 3 games you haven't seen touchdowns, and that's been the problem. But down the stretch, he's got Buffalo, Chicago, San Fran, Minnesota. Those are games where you can see Amon-Ra St. Brown popping off in any one of those games. So, and multiple of those games. So when you look at that, I'm not too worried heading into the postseason.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that when you do look at the upcoming schedule, you got Buffalo, which they've been hit and miss this year. Also a game where, Detroit can find themselves down, and so they need to throw the ball. I think that that's an opportunity there. Chicago, might be the only one that I kind of am like, okay, well, they might just go up really big, and Chicago's been really bad against the run. And so that could just be a running backs game. And then San Francisco could be a shootout, could also go the other way where it's a defensive battle. And so that'll be the championship week. Be kind of interesting to see what happens, though. On the other side of the ball, Green Bay, this was one where we didn't know how the run game was going to go, and we kind of were like, okay, well, Josh Jacobs might get like taken out as far as game strip goes. That didn't really end up as the case. Scores 3 times, 18 carries, only 66 yards on the 18 carries, but he does get in the end zone 3 times. Big fantasy output for him. The struggle really came as far as the passing game goes. Jordan Love couldn't really get it going, ends up getting over 200 yards by the end of the game, but only a touchdown, only throws the ball 20 times, which was pretty notable here. And Christian Watson ends up being the guy who gets the most catches, 4 catches, 114 yards, but they really just couldn't get the passing game going, I think was a storyline here. And a guy like a Jaden Reed, you were obviously disappointed in.
Yeah, it was a hard Thursday night. Sitting there rooting for Jaden Reed. Obviously, had a great game in the first time that they played Detroit, and I'm thinking, all right, here's sky's the limit here, and a big fat goose egg from Jaden Reed on Thursday night. So that was disappointing. I think when you look at the Packers, though, they said, all right, well, the run game's working, so why go away from it? I mean, this was also a game where they're going up against Detroit, who's the top run defense in the NFL, and the run game was still somehow getting the job done. Even the 66 yards is actually a great line against Detroit. And then you add the 3 touchdowns on top of it. You're like, oh, what a day from Josh Jacobs in the end. But that shows that Josh Jacobs right now is unbelievable. Near the top of running backs in the NFL. I think since after that bye week for Green Bay, they've really honed in on, all right, let's get Josh Jacobs going, get him the ball, whether it's in the passing game, or in the running game, whatever it is, get him going. And he's been phenomenal so far. A really great landing spot in the end, it looks like, in Green Bay for Josh Jacobs. But how can you go away from him right now? I mean, he's on fire, Brett. Even though they lost this game, like, how can this offense really go away from Josh Jacobs and what he's been able to do? It takes pressure off Jordan Love, and only 20 passing attempts, which you're not a fan of, obviously, a lot of fantasy owners. I think when you look at it, though, like, they're going to go with what's working for them on the day. And as long as Josh Jacobs keeps going and consistently putting up points, they're not going to go away from him anytime soon.
Yeah, and certainly it should be said that there's really no competition for the running back spot behind Josh Jacobs. Obviously, you have Marshawn Lloyd, who was in and then out, and Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson just aren't any sort of competition. Kind of throwing him in there when Josh Jacobs needs a breather. And so, yeah, I think that he has proven himself to be a workhorse back. And he's going to continue to do that. And so for the next couple of weeks, I actually think that this is a guy who's going to be on the upswing as far as it goes, because I think that they're essentially going to try to ramp him up for the playoffs. And we've started that in the last couple of weeks, where his workload's got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And if they can get there into the playoffs, then it's certainly going to have to be a guy who can get going.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so let's jump right into our standouts here from last week, and we got to start out with Jerry Jeudy. He is a celebrity in our Dynasty League and a celebrity on a game which was basically a revenge game in Denver, as he travels to Denver, 9 catches, 235 yards, a touchdown. I laugh as I say it because it just was an output that was so unexpected. Heading into this one, but taunting the crowd, doing the wave, and you saw it there on our thumbnail. Let's see if I can bring this back up, because it was just so funny as far as how it was. I can't even find this, but it's okay. Jerry Jeudy just basically takes over. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I mean, just check that out. He was giving it to the fans there in Denver. Zach, I mean, just insane output. I don't know how much this is going to go forward, um, in the next couple weeks, but Jerry Judy certainly should be in your lineup at least this week, right?
100%. Yeah, Brett. I mean, I even have him in one of my dynasty leagues, and I have a pretty good wide receiver room. I was like, I'm still going to put Jerry Judy in. I'll put him in a flex. I'll pick him over one of my running back. I have to put him in my lineup right now. Brett, with Jameis, it's ridiculous. It's just the targets that in the end, we're talking about a guy who, I mean, we're talking week 5, week 6, week 7. Like he's getting 3 targets, maybe 6 targets. This guy has 11 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games. I mean, that's everything you want for a wide receiver is what Jerry Judy has gotten so far in 3 of the last 4 weeks. And since Jameis has come in, like it's been really, really strong. And had that game against New Orleans where he had 6 receptions, 142 yards, not even close to the level of this one. 9 receptions, 235, and a touchdown. And when you look at Judy, like he's feeling good right now. I mean, you look at this matchup this week and say, all right, and we're going to get to it, Pittsburgh against Cleveland. Maybe you're a little iffy on it. However, I think Pittsburgh looks pretty good and probably going to be up in this game. I mean, so what is Cleveland going to do? Throw the ball. So when it comes to that, they're going to be slinging the ball around. I don't think it's enough to be saying, "Oh, well, Pittsburgh's defense is really good, so Judy's not going to have a great day." Maybe he's not going to have a Denver type day like he did against the Broncos, but he's still going to get those maybe 10 plus targets like he has been. So that's a really good sign, and should be a interesting one heading into this week. And people are worried about the last time they played Pittsburgh. I don't think it's snowing like it was on that Thursday night game when they last played in Cleveland this week, Brett. So the ball will be moving. Jameis will be throwing it. So should be another good week up ahead.
Double-digit fantasy points in the last 5 weeks that he has played, and of course we don't include week 10's bye week. But in his last 5 games played, he has double-digit fantasy points, and 2 of the last 3 weeks he has over 25 points, and so that's pretty significant there for Jerry Judy. Moving on to our next standout here, Brock Bowers. Zach, dude's just been a stud all year. 10 catches, 140 yards for a touchdown on 14 targets. Finishes with 0.2 fantasy PPR points. And yeah, I mean, this is just the focal guy in this offense. Don't know how much otherwise you can say.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about Brock Bowers all season long. This is nothing new for us. I think that just the big thing in the end was getting that touchdown, just out of nowhere. Also, a 30+ yarder, and that really just made the day that was really great on volume. It made it a boom day for Brock Bowers. So another great week for him, and really the best tight end in fantasy right now.
Yeah, certainly just got to keep rolling them out. Only needs 3 more catches to set a new rookie record for tight ends, which was set by Sam Laporta last year, and then 193 yards away from breaking Mike Ditka's rookie record of 1,076 receiving yards. Surely they're going to try to go get him that one. And he has quite a few games to do it. So even if they need to rest him in that final game, he still can be basically put it there. Let's go to our last one here. It is Bucky Irving, and Zach Irving had just a significant workload here. 25 carries, 152 yards, and a touchdown. Also had 3 catches for 33 yards through the air. Finishes with 27.5 standard PPR points here. I mean, I think that we started to see it over the last bunch of weeks as far as the turnover, as far as Rachaad White to Bucky Irving. It's kind of leaning towards Irving now. The scales have kind of tipped a bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when you look at Irving, it's just more so about the run game. Like, I mean, the run game, it's gonna go to Bucky Irving, and the passing game, you're gonna see more of Rashad White. I think just in this game overall, I mean, he's versing really the worst or one of the worst run defenses in the NFL in Carolina, who hasn't been able to stop anything in the run for the last year or so. So he boomed this week, and the big sign for me was that they continued to go to the run game a lot. This is an offense where they pass the ball a ton, Brett. Baker Mayfield slings the ball around, and I know this game went to overtime as well, but you look at it in the end, and 25 carries. 25 carries is a ton for any running back in this Bucks running back room in any week. So that's a good sign for Bucky Irving owners. He also gets the 3 receptions out of the backfield. I think this is proven. Yeah, Bucky Irving is really the lead guy, and it doesn't take away really the value of Rashad White, because I think we've known that he's been just the pass catcher in the end. You just know now that, yeah, when they need a run, they're going straight to Bucky Irving over White, definitely.
Yeah, no, it was a question as far as Bucky Irving, whether he'd be able to play or not today. It looks like he is going to go. And so roll out Bucky Irving, and he's just continuing to take over that backfield. Zach, we got to get to a question here from Ryan. Good morning. Start 2, please. CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, Westbrook Akine, and Brian Thomas Jr. Zach, I'm guessing you're picking CeeDee Lamb as one of these 2 guys, but as far as the other 2 guys, who are we picking? Or the other 3 guys, who are we picking for that spot?
Yeah, it's going to be for me. It's CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. We just talked about Jerry Jeudy just a little while ago, Brett, and I mean, just it's going to be another day where a lot of targets, and when you look at the Pittsburgh defense, yeah, they're strong, but I think the Pittsburgh offense is going to put up points in this game, and they may be up by a lot. So that's going to force Jameis to throw the ball once again. Another opportunity for Jeudy to get those 10+ targets that he's gotten in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Should be another good week for him. I understand when people are talking about CeeDee Lamb right now, and yeah, the struggles. You can't bench CeeDee Lamb. It's week 14. I mean, down the stretch, it's just a guy that you cannot bench him. And if it was some other guys that maybe I would see like the boom potential. Yeah, Westbrook Akine has had that streak, but obviously it's more of a boomer bust play. And Brian Thomas is with Mac Jones at quarterback now. So you got to play CeeDee Lamb, especially down the stretch. I know it's hard. Just hang in there for a couple more weeks, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that CeeDee Lamb, to me, he's still an automatic start no matter what. And I would say on the other side of it, when you break it down, Westbrook Akine, I probably would eliminate from those other 3 guys. So it really comes down to Brian Thomas or Jerry Jeudy. Like you just said, the workload for Jerry Jeudy is just too high to pass up. So I'm going to take him as well. And Brian Thomas, yeah, we got Mac Jones, and I think that that's going to downgrade him a bit here. And a game against Tennessee could be some ugly football here today.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yes, and Ryan commented right there, nervous, and it's hard to sit your studs. And that's, I think, where it kind of lies here as far as playing your guys versus sitting your guys. If you pick that guy and we're heading into this playoff time, you got to roll that guy out there.
Yeah, 100%. Week 14, down the stretch, you got to go with your top guys as always.
Yeah, and let's jump right into the Sunday slate as we go game by game here. Zach, we start out in sunny Miami, Florida, as the New York Jets travel south to take on the Dolphins. Zach, let's start out with the Dolphins because I think they're a little bit more of a sure thing here than the Jets this week. You're kind of just rolling out your guys, I would say. 2 is still on that border there of the 1 to 2, and it depends on your situation. But you're still rolling out Achane. You're still rolling out Tyreek. Jalen Waddle, I would say, is probably an iffier one as far as your guys, and I think that he has started to kind of fade this season as a Jalen Waddle owner. I can speak to that. And, yeah, we kind of saw those couple boom weeks, but for the most part, it's just been on the outs this year with Jalen Waddle. Hasn't been a great one. So he's probably a riskier flex. But Jonnu Smith has been for sure the number 2 receiver in this offense, and has been nothing but great. And so you're rolling him out there if you have him.
Yeah, 100%. And it's hard to bench Jonnu Smith right now. He's got to be in your lineup. Like there's no doubt about it. He's been amazing so far this season, and I mean just the last couple of weeks, Brett. Just the numbers that he's putting up really is remarkable. And he's getting 11 targets. He got 11 targets last week, 10 receptions, 113 yards. I mean, just the volume is unmatched as a tight end. And when you look at that, he's got to be in your lineup. But yeah, I agree on all fronts, and a little bit iffy on Waddle. But they're also playing the Jets here, so you never know. The Jets defense, although they've been really, really good in the passing game, actually rankings wise so far this season, although we've seen some individual performances to forget, they're still up high in terms of the passing rank. It's the running game where they are really bad. So it should be a big day for Devon Achane, and expect a big performance from him.
Yeah, and also should be noted that Sauce Gardner will not play today, nor will C.J. Mosley in the middle of that offense. So I think that it could free up a Jonnu Smith right over the middle, could free up a Tyreek Hill or even a Jalen Waddle out wide. And so, it's a little bit iffy, and it looks like they are shutting down C.J. Mosley for the rest of the season. So tight ends against the Jets stock up here in the playoffs going forward. On the Jets side of things, I think it's a little bit murkier here, only because the running game is a little unsure. Breece Hall was listed as doubtful heading in to yesterday, and by the end of yesterday, or I should say on Friday, he was listed as doubtful. Heading into yesterday, he automatically gets ruled out. And so it looks like the rookie duo of Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis are going to take the workload here for the Jets. Zach, what do we think about the Jets lineup as a whole? Is this just basically going to be, let's just throw the ball to Devon and get Wilson the entire game?
It could, but I also think that Braylon Allen's going to get a healthy workload here, Brett. I do think that being the lead back and also he's been the number 2 all year and has gotten carries. He's gotten the goal line carries. He's gotten those short yardage carries, where, you in a game where Breece Hall is not there, like he's going to get every one of those. Plus he's going to be the early down back. I think when you look at the passing game, though, it's going to be Isaiah Davis on third down and those passing downs, Brett. He's going to come in and be that PPR guy. So he could rack up a number of receptions here, but knowing Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw the ball short too much, I think he's more so looking for his guys, you said it, Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, who I think both of them, as long as Rodgers is able to get them the ball, they should have solid days. Miami, though, tough defense to go up against. They've been real strong this year, so not a great matchup in the end. But even so, I think when you look at the overall for the Jets, Braylon Allen is got to be in your lineup with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams this week.
And as we see this, literally the Jets just tweeted out, keep your eyes peeled for these rookie running backs. Kind of good timing. Maybe they're watching. Yeah, I think that as far as Braylon Allen's workload goes, there will be a significant play of a few weeks, as we do watch every Jet game here. It basically has become, well, Braylon Allen's going to get this workload, but his yards per carry is less than 3 yards. And so we kind of haven't seen that side to him where he can handle this significant workload. That said, Breece Hall has not been hurt the entire year, so we haven't needed to see that. He hasn't had more than 12 carries in a game the entire season. And so I do think he is going to split some time here with Isaiah Davis. Isaiah Davis has been, like you said, used in the passing game. So I do consider Braylon Allen probably a lower end running back 2. And I would say that Isaiah Davis probably is a flex play this week. And I would say if I had to pick who would be more likely to get into the end zone, I'm actually going with Isaiah Davis. And I think that looking at how they've used the guys around the goal line, especially in the last 2 weeks, Isaiah Davis has gotten that within the 20-yard line. And so, I am going to start him in my lineup this week. As I said earlier, I have Breece Hall, and so Braylon Allen is picked up by another team, and so I am going with Isaiah Davis in my lineup this week, and we'll knock on wood and say a prayer and cross our fingers and toes.
Yeah, fall into the end zone, Isaiah Davis. Help Brett out this week. That should be that's a big one for you.
Yeah, certainly so. And obviously at the receiving game, you're just starting those guys. Aaron Rodgers, I would say, is a super flex start, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right, so let's travel down or travel up. I see, did it again. We'll travel up to Minnesota as they take on Atlanta. Zach, let's start out with the Falcons here. And Kirk Cousins has just been horrendous in the last bunch of weeks here, and there's no way to sugarcoat that at all. He just has not been the Cousins that was in Minnesota. This is a revenge game now. Minnesota obviously coming out and saying, hey, we need to turn the page and we're done with him. And now he gets to come back and kind of say, well, hold on a second, I still got it. Love the storylines heading into here, especially with the struggles coming into this game of Kirk Cousins. Could be a pretty big output here. That said, he's still a super flex start for me, and I don't know that you can upgrade him right now just based on his struggles. The same way with Aaron Rodgers, and we've seen those struggles. Just the old guys with the Achilles, man, and coming off those Achilles injuries, both of them have just not been able to do it this season. Bijan, you're rolling him out there. Drake London has been a stud and probably factors in as a low-end wide receiver one. He's just been getting a ridiculous target share. Darnell Mooney also has found himself in, as far as the target share goes, the rest of those targets. He probably is a wide receiver too. You're putting him in there. Kyle Pitts has just been, zombie town, man. And the targets that we started to see early in the year have subsided, and he's gone back to the annoying tight end on your fantasy bench that we have seen in this last few years. So for me, I am staying away from Kyle Pitts this week.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And just looking at the overall, I agree on really all fronts and really the main three guys and Bijan as well as Mooney. And Mooney really now more of a flex play out of bad week last week. And as long as Kirk Cousins is like continuing to struggle, I think that just hurts a guy like Darnell Mooney. I don't know if it hurts a guy like Drake London too much because I still think he's going to get the targets. I think it more so hurts a Mooney who really is dependent on Kirk Cousins having a good game and being able to get him the ball. He's really always going to get Drake London the ball, and it's just a worry of mine. Trusting Mooney, you kind of go either way this week. That's why he's a flex play. But Brett, I'm going to keep an eye on the watch, even though I don't have a watch. I am going to keep an eye because it could be some Penix time pretty soon if we're on this track right now. So obviously a guy that I drafted in Superflex last year. So I'm waiting for that. But yeah, Kirk looks really, really bad right now. Hopefully for Falcons fans, they get this win. They need a big one right now because all of a sudden they had a 2-game lead in the South, Brett, and Tampa said, all right, thank you very much. Couple of losses for Atlanta, and right away we're back in it. They still have the tiebreaker, Atlanta does, after 2 wins against Tampa Bay. But if Kirk Cousins keeps playing like this, this season might be soon over for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I think that from my perspective, I would say that they probably won't bench Kirk Cousins for the rest of this season. However, obviously longer term plans and the way that teams just kind of mix around money and figure out ways to get rid of big cap hits and things like that. It could be the beginning of the end as far as it goes with Kirk. But for now, I think we kind of just have to assume that Kirk Cousins is going to be the starter for the rest of this season. And with that, I think that guys like Mooney, guys like London are still going to get theirs, in addition to obviously a Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, 100%.
On the other side of the ball, Sam Darnold has been an absolute stud. Came out this week about the price tag going up on Sam Darnold and whether or not the Vikings would end up keeping him. And so, obviously, Jones implications at that point where they brought him in, they want to see what he's like so that maybe they can get a discount on a guy in the case JJ McCarthy is not ready, as we spoke about just a few weeks ago when Daniel Jones ended up signing with the Vikings, and that was sort of the plan. We've now gotten reports that in fact is the plan. And so, yeah, but Sam Darnold has been an absolute stud this year, and so you got to factor him in as a quarterback one. Aaron Jones, you're rolling him out there as well. Cam Akers has been kind of hit and miss this year, and so I probably put him in desperation flex play only because of the Bimageddon that we are currently finding ourselves in, and where you're kind of putting in the backup in your lineup, hoping that one of them sticks. I don't know that I would go with Cam Akers as far as it goes, but he is an option just as that. What I would say is that this offense really goes down by Aaron Jones, these two pass catchers, and now three if you want to include Jordan Addison in there. Hawkinson, Addison, Jefferson, you got to start all three of them.
Yeah, 100%. Start all those guys. And Brett, it actually has been interesting. We haven't seen a true, I feel like, Justin Jefferson like season. Like it hasn't been as great as we really first were looking at. Of course, just getting on the same page as Darnold and just being that guy. Like there's some matchups in the last couple of weeks that he's really, really struggled. He ends up getting those targets in the end and has the target share, turning it into receptions and yards. Haven't seen a lot of touchdowns, haven't seen a lot of boom weeks. So this one, though, when you look at this matchup against Atlanta, I mean, you're licking your lips as a Jefferson owner, saying, all right, here we go. Like, this is the week. I'm expecting a monster week here from Jefferson. I just don't think Atlanta's secondary and AJ Terrell and those guys, I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up with a guy like Jefferson this week. So expect a boom week. You've waited a while, Jefferson owners, but I think it's coming this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this could be a big week here ahead for him. And obviously, you're trying to right the ship here. As we head into the fantasy playoffs, I think this could be a big week ahead for Jefferson owners. Zach, let's head to Philadelphia for the following game here, and it's the Carolina Panthers against the Philadelphia Eagles. Zach, could be a massive, massive day again for Saquon Barkley. And I think that, this could be a blowout here. The Eagles currently are favored by almost 15 points in this one. You kind of just got to start all your guys. I think the notable thing here is that Dallas Goedert was put on IR, and so Grant Calcaterra is coming in as the tight end. In games that Dallas Goedert didn't play, Calcaterra is actually factored in pretty well here. So I would say he's probably a borderline tight end one here, especially in this Bimageddon week that we find ourselves in. But as far as the rest of that lineup, you're starting Hurts and Brown and Devonta and Saquon, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting all those guys. I think Devonta is a bit interesting, Brett, because I don't think he has that same boom potential that he had in some other years and maybe some other games. I think this game is one that you're probably shutting off unless you're a fan of the team or something, like midway through the third quarter. It's like 35-7 maybe, and you're like, all right, well, on to the next game kind of deal. And they take out Saquon and Hurts and all those guys and rest them up. I think it's kind of one of those games, but I also believe I do think there's going to be a lot in the passing game. I do think they're going to get the targets out there and Brown and Devonta involved. And you mentioned Calcaterra in there for Goddard. But how can you tell me, after looking at Tampa Bay last week and what Bucky Irving was able to do against Carolina, that this is not going to be a Saquon Barkley like 40 burger? Just all right, we're good. Let's move on to the next one. I think it's just one of those games, Brett, where I mean they're going to go with the weakness of the defense and say, all right, give the ball to Saquon, allow Hurts to get out of the pocket and run the ball. I think it's kind of one of those games here that does limit, I think, a bit of the upside of some of those wide receivers and some of those pass catchers. They'll still get their points, but I think this one's about the run game in this one for Philly.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the ball here, it gets a little bit murkier. I think that if you have a Chuba Hubbard, you're playing him. But as far as the rest of the guys, I think it's, I think that as far as Bryce Young, we've seen the improvement. He's been very good, but this could be a blowout. That said, I think that Bryce Young could get a pretty good fantasy output. So I probably would put him in the super flex range. He's continued to week in and week out that he can achieve those numbers, and he might be having to throw the ball a bit more in this week. Chuba Hubbard, obviously, I would say you can put him in. That said, I think that they really, really need him to factor in as far as the passing game goes, especially if they're down big. It's what Adam Thielen has kind of gotten back to himself. That said, I'm probably staying away from him because it's been just very hit and miss, and the Eagles' secondary has been very good this year. So I'm going to say if they were going to cover one of these receivers, it's probably going to be Adam Thielen over David Moore.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you're looking at this game script could get a little wonky in the end. And with a blowout by Philly, we're expecting that would really diminish maybe a day for Chuba Hubbard. You're still going to put him in. You're still going to hope gets in the end zone. That's who they're going to. And maybe breaks up a couple runs. But yeah, I think game script wise, this does lead to the passing game. However, I don't know how confident you feel with Bryce Young against this Philly defense. They've been the best defense in football, I think, by a mile in this last stretch and on this winning streak. They have been tremendous, Brett. So a real animal that they're going up against on the road in Philly. It's hard to actually feel confident in any of these Carolina guys this week.
Yep, let's move on to the next game here. The Giants hosting the New Orleans Saints. Zach, let's start out with the Saints because they lost, obviously, Taysom Hill last week. And now their offense looks a little bit different. I think that it really just comes down to how many times is Alvin Kamara going to get the ball in the air and on the ground. Certainly a must start. As far as the rest of the offense, though, I don't know that you can really start any of these guys, with the exception of super flex leagues where you're probably rolling Derek Carr there.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say for just anybody that may be in like a tight end bind and looking for it, why not give Juwan Johnson maybe a shot? If you had a Taysom Hill and maybe one of your other guys is hurt or you're just figuring things out and you're kind of last ditch opportunity here and looking for somebody on the waiver wire, check if Juwan Johnson's there. Maybe he already got picked up, but that's a guy that like they're still going to have to somehow get this passing game involved. And it's a guy who's just a big dude, big frame, and in the red zone, they need a touchdown. Maybe the run game's not working. Carr throws it to a Juwan Johnson. That's really it. I would say for this offense, I'm not taking the boomer bust shots on the MVSs of the world or anything like that, Brett. Kamara's in your lineup, Carr's in your lineup in maybe a super flex. I think Juwan Johnson's got to be on the radar now, though, because he doesn't have a Taysom Hill right there who would take a lot of the tight end targets so far this season.
Poor Giant fans that have went through this season, I think deserve a lot of credit here. This has just been a brutal year, 100th year in the history of the team, and there's this pomp and circumstance, and it ends up just being a complete disaster. Tickets right now for kickoff in just a few hours are at $7. $7 to get your foot in the door there. And yeah, it's just kind of been that year here for the Giants fans. And so I'm not sure that I'm starting anybody here except for Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy. I think that that's sort of just been it for the whole season. Obviously, Theo Johnson was a big factor in the offense. He's now out for the season. Drew Lock, I don't know how confident I am in even Drew Lock. a risky super flex option at best. But yeah, I'm staying away from everybody else on this. I understand Wendell Robinson is factored in a few games. This is going to be an ugly football game, and they're going to try to get Malik Neighbors the ball. They're going to try to get Todd Tracy the ball. I think I would stay away from everyone else.
Yeah, Brett, actually, an iffy one here, and I know you're a Neighbors owner as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming down to the wire here. He did not practice on Friday, though we found out, and he's questionable in the end. And I did see reports that he may just be like limited throughout the game. So now this leads to another discussion of what's the deal here with Malik Neighbors, and can you go with it? I know it's one of those guys that you're like, how do you put him on your bench? But I mean I have some guys right now on my roster that I'd say I'd take over a limited Malik Neighbors. With how this Giants offense is rolling, Malik Neighbors does not get touchdowns. That's just something right now. The Giants can't score in the red zone ever. So it limits the upside there. There's some decisions. Obviously, I think we got like 5 minutes, Brett, till the reports come out and everything. Yeah. So we'll figure something out in terms of Malik Neighbors. Maybe we'll talk about it a bit later in the show and when we find out that stuff. But there's an iffy decision here on Neighbors this week.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you on that. I just think you can't deny the talent, and this is the focal point of this offense. And so if you're downgrading him, you're downgrading him to like a flex option, but I don't know that I would downgrade him out of my lineup. So yeah, I'd take like you kind of alluded to before, I would take limited Malik Neighbors over a lot of guys in the league right now, just based on this target share and based on the ability for him to get himself open. And obviously, if he is hindered a little bit, I still would find myself putting him in my lineup, especially in this make or break week here. So yeah, but it is definitely a question, and you kind of have to ask all the questions when we head to again a make or break sort of situation here. Zach, let's travel down to Tennessee as they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll start out with the Titans. Tony Pollard has been very good for these guys going forward. There was, a consideration by me to put Tajay Spears in my lineup, and I kind of was like, okay, well, maybe because he came back last week and he didn't exactly get the workload that he should have got. They kind of were a little more cautious than people expected. And so not really sure as far as if it was just Tony Pollard's been really good, so let's continue to feed him the ball, or if Tajay Spears has something more and they just kind of wasn't ready. That said, I'm firing up Tony Pollard. I am staying away from Tajay Spears this week. You're rolling out Calvin Ridley, who's just been very, very good for these guys. And yeah, I think that, one of the questions we had earlier was about Nick Westbrook-Akine. I think he is a flex consideration. I think that, in this sort of bye week where we find ourselves, he is an option right now as far as the ability for him to get downfield and catch one of those longer range targets. And yeah, I would say he's probably a boomer bust, but desperation flex for me for Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm actually going to put one guy on the radar right now, Brett, that maybe you didn't expect, but I'm riding the Levis train right now. I know the numbers aren't fantastic, but they are solid. They are really solid right now, and depending on your league and quarterback and bonuses, I mean, there's some leagues where he's had over 20 points in a couple of these weeks. When you look at Levis, though, like these last 4 games since he was put back in, Brett, 19 points, 16 points, 17 points, 16 points. And then you look at his schedule down the stretch, Jacksonville, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville again. So I'm just riding the train right now. I have CJ Stroud as well as Anthony Richardson on bye this week. My top league, I'm going with Will Levis against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week as a streaming option. But it's also one thing to just keep an eye on. Like, if he's continuing to cruise and this offense is continuing to roll, I may have to ride the Levis train a little bit longer than just 1 week. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, a great schedule down the stretch for him. So a guy to keep an eye
on. I would just like to say that a breaking news report just came in that a plane is currently flying over MetLife Stadium holding a banner that says, "Mr. Mara, enough, please fix this dumpster fire." And so, yeah, that is just, we just talked about the $7 tickets for the Giants. Like, it's not good. Changing pace here. Just sorry, that distracted me a little bit there. Changing pace here. I agree with you on Will Levis. I think that if you find yourselves in one of those situations where Will Levis is out there available in your league, he is a stash candidate. I think that, when you look at the risk and reward, you obviously have the risk of you potentially losing your quarterback here in the playoffs. And we kind of talk about, the unconservative approach to the playoffs where you kind of got to just think outside the box. You can drop some guys that you wouldn't normally drop based off of, the I don't need them for the next couple of weeks. And yes, they're a good player, but I'm not going to use them. So if you're not going to use them and you don't care about your competition using them, then feel free to drop certain guys. Shore up yourself and get your insurance in there. So yeah, as far as Levis goes, I agree. I think that is a guy to potentially keep on the radar there, and he has been good. And so I do agree with you on that side of things. I do understand the limitation, the lower ceiling, but sometimes you just need a high floor more than anything. And Will Levis has provided that for pretty much the whole year, at least the second half of this year, certainly. And so I do agree with you. Now, moving over to the Jaguars, Evan Ingram, tight end 1. The rest of them, it's kind of murky here. Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne have kind of split carries here. Etienne kind of got the go-ahead last week as far as the carries go. That said, I kind of put them dead even with each other, but I'm not confident in either one of them. I'm not. I think that if there's anybody who's going to be the big output in this offense, it's Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas Jr. I can understand where people are like, well, hold on a second, you got to start ETN. And I would, based off of the flex consideration, but I don't know that I can put him higher than that right now.
Yeah, I also have, there's a couple of teams where I have ETN and I just have better guys right next to him. So I'm going to go with those guys over ETN in a week where he's in Tennessee. Tennessee's run defense has been good this year, and they're figuring things out. So I think when you look at it, yeah, ETN in most cases, yeah, probably going to end up being in your lineup. But obviously still the question marks right now. And Brian Thomas is probably a wide receiver 3, I would say, right now, Brett. And then when you look at Evan Ingram, he's in your lineup. But yeah, they got Mac Jones at quarterback. So maybe they focus on the run a little bit more and get those guys going, Bigsby and ETN. But we'll see what happens. And you just got to simply, start your guys there in Jacksonville.
So just some quick news here before we move on to the next game. Sauce Gardner officially is inactive. He was listed as doubtful. Malachi Corley is inactive with the return of Alan Lazard. Cedric Tillman already was ruled out, but he is listed as inactive as well. And Stephon Gilmore has been active. George Pickens will not be active as well. And so we're going to get to the Pittsburgh game in just a little bit, but Pickens not playing today for the Steelers. Zach, let's jump over to our next game here. Tampa Bay at Vegas. And obviously for Vegas, you got to talk Brock Bowers, and he's a must here. I think my question to you is, are you rolling out any of these running backs? Madison is not playing today, or not expected to play today.
So then Abdullah is a guy to keep an eye on if that's the case. Obviously, he's more of like He's just a flex play, Brett. I think in the end, he's a flex play. If you got one guy on a buy and you need another guy to plug in, I think Abdullah's like one of those guys. But you also have Sincere McCormick, who's been hanging around there. He's been getting touches as well. I think when you look at it, yeah, like it's kind of a mess in my mind, and maybe a backfield to just almost avoid because you just don't know who's going to get one touch or who's going to get a goal line touch here or one there. So for that reason, like those two guys, McCormick and Abdullah, are both flex plays in my mind. And for that reason, I'm most likely staying away in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think that listen, Jacoby Myers has been very good this year with having a Devontae Adams there, and so you're probably rolling him out there. As far as Amir Abdullah goes, he hasn't been effective. He just hasn't. I think that the workload will be there. We saw Sincere McCormick come out last week and kind of play an impact here. Abdullah just hasn't been effective, and so I can understand where you kind of put him in as a flex play in bye week, but he's certainly no more than that. On the other side of the ball, obviously we kind of just have the regular guys that we have each and every week here. Baker Mayfield is right on that border of quarterback 1, quarterback 2. Bucky Irving, you got to play him this week, as we alluded to before. Rachaad White, probably a flex option here. And then I would say Mike Evans obviously must start, but I would say Cade Otton right now for me becomes right on that border here, tight end 1, just based on he's been able to get a workload here.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, just simply start your guys here. They have a full room of guys to put in your lineup. And I mean, this offense has been consistent all year long. So continue to roll with those guys. And it should be a good matchup here. Vegas and Tampa. I think two teams that are just going to want to throw the ball. So it should be a lot of pass catchers getting stuff, and even the run game involved with Irving, as you mentioned, for Tampa Bay.
All right, Zach, let's jump to this game here. And we just got the official word from the Pittsburgh Steelers that George Pickens is not going to play this week. And so Calvin Austin, Mike Williams, Pat Freiermuth, stock up on all three of them. Or is there anybody that you're actually taking here now this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting like notifications off the rails that like people are picking up Calvin Austin right now. I'm like, all right, well, like it's cool. Like, yeah, there's some points where I'm like, all right, yeah, fine, whatever, throw him in as a flex play. But none of these guys are really nothing more than that. It is one of those games where, yeah, they're going up against Cleveland. Cleveland's going to want to throw the ball. I think Pittsburgh's going to be up in the game, rely on their defense, rely on their run game. I think it's more so a day for the guys like Warren and Najee to really step up. I think it's kind of one of those more than anything in my mind, Brett. Yeah, you could take a shot on one of those wide receivers or when you have Williams and Austin there. I think in the passing game, probably the guy that gets the biggest boost would be Freiermuth in my mind. Short yardage, reliable tight end and reliable guy in the offense. Calvin Austin's more of a like a deep shot kind of guy, I think, as well. So for that reason, it's more of all right, you're hoping for a deep shot or hoping for a big play here, rather than a Freiermuth who's probably get 5-6 targets easily. And in this game, that's what I'm really looking more so at. And I mentioned the run game.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how people are rushing to go get a Calvin Austin. I actually would prefer Mike Williams over Calvin Austin, believe it or not. And I think that Mike Williams has proven himself to be pretty good, obviously in his career, but as a Pittsburgh Steeler here in this short time. Pat Freiermuth, I think, gets the biggest stock up. And if you were considering between two tight ends, I think that you probably have to roll out Freiermuth now. In the right case, because I think that he's going to get the bulk of these targets here. That said, yes, stock up on Calvin Austin, stock up on Mike Williams, and they're both probably flex plays at best for me with the news. I think that I would also give stock up to Jaylen Warren who I thought was sort of going to be written off here. But he's been really good in the passing game. And I don't know that you can discount that. Najee Harris has obviously still been the number one running back there, but if they're going to have to throw the ball here, they've kind of gone to Jaylen Warren. So stock up on him. I would say he's probably a higher end running back 3 now, whereas Najee's probably still a running back 2. Russell Wilson, I think, goes stock down actually on this one. He was probably on the borderline of the quarterback 1, quarterback 2. I would probably put him into that quarterback 2 range now with this news. And so if you're considering him with a different quarterback, I think that you probably could give the edge to that other quarterback, somebody right in that rankings here with the George Pickens news.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's really just you take the top weapon away and you say, all right, well, what is he going to do now? And obviously, Russell Wilson still has some run ability, but not as much as obviously earlier in his career. So not going to get the same amount of points without Pickens in the lineup. So we'll see what happens. On the other side, Brett, Cleveland. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Really, Judy is a almost a must start for me. For those that have enjoyed the ride of Jameis Winston, not a quarterback 1 in a 10 or 12 team league in my mind. Although there are bye weeks, so just kind of see what you got. You could end up having to start him if you have bye week trouble. But then you look at just the rest of these guys, and Njoku's in automatic lock in your lineup as well at tight end. I think the interesting part is the run game, Brett, because like Nick Chubb and you got Jerome Ford there as well. I still think you're probably putting Chubb in there. The confidence level kind of drops at a point. Plus, this matchup is pretty brutal on the road in Pittsburgh. So I'm kind of iffy on it. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I do. I think that I would kind of go stock down on all these guys this week. I understand that they're playing hot right now. Jameis is probably, I can't even say quarterback 1 because it's just, I got to put him in the super flex. I know that there's a lot of people that are considering him as their starter this week. Really tough matchup. And that's just where it comes.
I said just bye weeks. Bye weeks mainly the main reason for Jameis in a 1 quarter.
Yeah, yeah, and I get that. And I get that. I understand it. I still am just so weary of that we're still going to see that Jameis side of things where it's just all hell breaks loose. And, we sort of saw it towards the end of that Denver game. Even though he was so good, we still saw the true Jameis come out. And 2 pick sixes ended up winning you that game because you had the Denver defense. And so, yeah, I mean, shout out to the Denver defense and what was just a total Monday Night Miracle. But I listen, I understand people are going to ride with Jameis this week, and I won't be one of those people, thankfully. But I understand where the bye week sort of comes in. I still am going stock down on the rest of these guys here. Chubb right now is probably a low end running back 2. Where a lot of people have him towards that higher end. Jerome Ford, I am not playing this week. And, he's out there on the waiver wire in a ton of leagues, and I'm not picking him up. Cedric Tillman was ruled out officially. Jerry Jeudy, throw him out there because, like we talked about at the top of the show, that's been the number 1 target. And so even with a guy like a Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy is sort of out-targeted him. And so Jerry Jeudy, put him in your lineup. David Njoku, put him in your lineup. But I still am a little bit weary of David Njoku. Sort of just depends on your situation, and you're kind of putting him into that lower tight end 1 as opposed to where he usually is right in that 5 or 6 range. You're probably down ticking him a little bit in what's a tough matchup. Elijah Moore, desperation flex play. I don't know that I can put him in any more than that. And yes, he has broken off a couple big targets, and it sort of has skewed his numbers a bit. And it almost reminds me of like a Tyler Lockett from a couple of years ago, where it was like half of his fantasy points were on 50-yard bombs and more. that's sort of been the name of the game here with Elijah Moore to a lesser degree, where you're breaking off a 30-yarder, and that's sort of where he's been getting a couple of them, and that's kind of skewed the numbers here. So I'm staying away from Elijah Moore this week as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, it's completely fair. And yeah, you saw more last week that he was getting some of those like short yardage and like third down kind of play. And fourth down, you gotta have it. Okay, just get to the first down marker. I think more so what you're gonna see from Moore is yeah, the deep looks and going downfield, and that's where the bulk of the fantasy points are gonna come from. I agree with you.
All right, so let's jump right to the next matchup here as we hit the 4 o'clock window. Seattle at Arizona. Zach, Kenneth Walker has been ruled out. Does that make Zach Charbonnet a must start?
Yeah, I was laughing. All of a sudden, I'm seeing Kenny McIntosh getting picked up as well in the league, as if that's going to really be a game changer this week. I think Zach Charbonnet all the way. Put him in your lineup. He's a lock in there. We talk about it always like before the season, like those handcuffs. If the one guy is out, the other guy is going to get a huge workload. So I'm expecting that from Charbonnet today. They're going up against Arizona, whose defense has been middle of the pack, has been good some games, bad other games. So we'll see what happens. But the healthy workload that Charbonnet is going to get this week, he's a lock in your lineup. And as for the rest of the guys, you're putting out those guys in DK and JSN, and I think that's pretty much it. I mean, Gino obviously more so a super flex in my mind than anything, and that's really it for me.
I agree. I think that Charbonnet is going to get a pretty big workload to here today, and we've seen games where he has been the guy, and he's basically just been the workhorse back. And so, yeah, Kenny McIntosh, I don't know how much he's going to factor in, and the opportunity will be there for him, but I don't know how much of a factor it is. I just want to make a note. That is a lot of red on my bench here. So I was very thankful in a bye week for Jonathan Taylor to be able to roll out a guy like Charbonnet, and now he is the starter. And so, we'll cross our fingers and toes for him as well. But yeah, I think that outside of DK and JSN, you're not rolling out any of the rest of those guys. Geno Smith has been very good this year. And he is a consideration for a start, just the same way that we were talking about Jameis. I would put Geno a touch higher here than I would Jameis. But it's sort of the same name of the game. Cardinals haven't been great, though. And that's where I think the difference is between Jameis and Geno's matchups this week. Cardinals have not been good at all, as opposed to a Pittsburgh defense that has been good all season long. So I would kind of say, okay, maybe roll with this week if I have as Anthony Richardson who's on a bye.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Arizona, like you look at it, and when you look at these guys, just start them. I mean, Connor, you got Kyler, you got Marvin, and you also have Trey McBride. But I think the Marvin situation is just, it's kind of, you go back and forth on it right now, Brett. And obviously ranked right now mid-20s by a lot of people. And that's probably the fair spot for it. And he's still going to be in your lineup. I don't know how you can. It's one of those guys also that, like, down the stretch, it's hard to bench him. He's going to be in your lineup this week. I think. I mean, solid matchup against Seattle. So we'll see what happens here. But a hard guy to definitely put on your bench, like we mentioned before.
On the other side of the ball, the Cardinals have had an up and down year, and I think that they've sort of kind of gone through the mill here. That said, Connor is pretty good in games with the rushing ability, and he's still there on the border right now as far as the low-end quarterback ones. Tough matchup. I think that, again, in this sort of range, you have to factor in that rushing ability when you compare him to some of those other guys. So for me, I think you can start Kyler Murray this week. James Conner also is a must start. I would say Marvin Harrison has kind of righted the ship a little bit here, and so you can probably just roll him out there, no problem. And then Trey McBride is just a must start as well. Outside of that, I'm not sure there's anybody to put. There's a lot of people, saying, "Oh, Trey Benson." I don't know about that. I think that James Conner has been able to manage his workload pretty well and have a significant one at that.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right, Zach. So let's jump to the next one. Buffalo at the Rams. Josh Allen, in what was just an amazing play, catches and throws on the exact same play, gets credit for it. Before that, it looked like you were dead in the water before the Monday Night Miracle that happened in Denver. But yeah, Josh Allen's just quarterback on all year. And so you kind of have to treat him as that. Must start for him. James Cook, roll him out as well. Cade, I think you could probably put him in this bye week. And then I would say that the wide receivers, Khalil Shakir and Amari Cooper, you probably got to roll both of those guys out there as well. Keon Coleman, probably staying away from him, but also desperation flex play. You need him for the bye week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like Shakir mainly. It comes to a decision when it comes to the other two in my mind, Cooper and Coleman, just because, yeah, and in terms of obviously your options right now, it could be in a bye week, a bit of a bind, but it's kind of proven to me that like Shakir is that lead number one, and then the rest of the guys are going to kind of get their stuff. But also you involve the run game, and Allen and Cook have been absolutely rolling. So this game, I think, they're on the road. They're in LA. I still think the Bills are on fire right now. So I don't know how anybody could get close to them, even the Rams with that offense. So it could be more of a those three guys. Plus, yeah, you mentioned Kincaid, who obviously coming back and everything. That's really what I'm rolling with this week for Buffalo.
Yeah, it's fair. I think that on the other side of the ball, we have obviously you're kind of just rolling out the two guys that you usually roll out. You roll out Kyron Williams as well. So start your guys. I would say that the Matt Stafford argument to be started this week is fair because I think Bills have been very shaky this year, and they haven't been able to, or I should say, they have been able to move down the field very quickly. This could be a game where these receivers do very well for the Bills and then get down the field quick and give the ball right back to the Rams. That's where I see the big output potentially for Matt Stafford. It's because he basically keeps getting the ball back very quickly.
Yeah, and obviously a bye week situation here. A lot of teams on a bye, big names, Lamar and such. Stafford's definitely a solid option here. The rest of the guys, pretty simple. Kyron, Nakua, and Cup. And you're rolling with those guys this week. And it should be an interesting matchup. This is the primetime game later, 4:25 start.
Yep. And let's move to the other 4:25 game here. Chicago at the 49ers. Zach, big story in this week for the Niners. Christian McCaffrey done for the year, put on IR, and then it's like, okay, well, Jordan Mason's going to be the guy. Well, no, he gets put on IR too, and all of a sudden, fantasy football world is thrown on his head, and Isaac Arendo becomes added in like 79% of leagues. And he becomes, I guess, you have to say, a must start this week. And we kind of are very unknown about Garendo, the rookie, but you sort of just have to roll him out there this week.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, lead back right now. And if anybody who had some fab budget left over before the playoffs start said, all right, well, here it goes. We're throwing it all. And Garendo is the name. I think it's been one of those years, Brett, where there hasn't been like that top waiver guy to really go after. There's been a couple guys that you're like, all right, maybe earlier in the season, I got to go get them. But there hasn't been that like number one name that like everybody is going after. Brett, there was 7 claims for Isaac Arendo in our league in our 10-team league this week. 7 claims, which was ridiculous. So, I mean, you look at it, and he's got to be in your lineup this week. And this is an interesting one, Brett, because a lot of guys obviously dealing with injuries for San Francisco. This offense is completely beat up. I am actually going out on a limb here, and that's the decision that it's coming down to. And obviously, I have an hour to decide. Jawan Jennings, Brett. I think this could be a boom week and a half for Jawan. I know the Bears have been really good against receivers so far this year, but I think Jawan Jennings could get 15 targets in the game, and I'm not even being kidding. Like, they could really just sling the ball to him. This offense has dealt with so many injuries and everything. You still got your guys there, but yeah, Jawan Jennings. I'm having that iffy decision. I got him, Moore, and Neighbors. Obviously, I'm coming down to the wire here, but yeah, I think Jawan Jennings could have a big week this week. They're going up against Chicago. It's at San Francisco this game, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're starting your main guys, your Purdy's of the world, and as well as Kittle. Then you got Garendo and Jawan Jennings as well. The question, though, is Deebo Samuel, who has been horrific this year. I mean, he's been really, really bad. So that's something to really look at. He's more of a flex play in the end. And I think Jennings in the end will get the bulk of the targets in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he is going to get the bulk of the targets over Deebo, over Kittle even. And so this is going to be a game where they're going to try to get up ahead early. And so, yeah, slinging the ball to Jawan Jennings, I think, is probably going to be their first option here. You're kind of just rolling your guys here, though. And, with Kittle, with Jawan Jennings, with Deebo, with Brenda, with Purdy, you're rolling all those guys out there no matter what. Staying away from Ricky Pearsall. He just hasn't been consistent enough for me to warrant starting him.
Yeah, 100%. I'll bring it to Chicago. I mean, Swift has obviously had that questionable tag next to him. It's more of like right now, we'll see what happens. I think they maybe announced I know they announced for Moore that he's most likely good to go and is expected to play. I don't know if they said the same for DeAndre Swift. I didn't look at that this morning, but yeah, either way, I mean, if Swift's in, you're putting him in. If he's not, there's a guy probably on the waiver wire by the name of Travis Homer, Brett, a guy that we've seen around the block, and he's obviously been in Seattle where he made a name for himself. Now he's in Chicago. He would, in my mind, be like probably just a flex play in the end if Swift misses out on this one. Obviously, Roschon Johnson out
He's
as
expected.
Well. Okay. So
Swift's expected to play, but we'll see how much workload it is. I think that Homer does factor in, though.
Okay, so if Swift is in, though, I don't see a world where you're like, all right, I got to bench him. Like, I mean, it depends on your options, of course. But if he's in, that's a guy that I would say, yeah, just put him in your lineup as usual. But I think for this wide receiver room, with Moore expected to go, expected to be in, it really just comes down to, yeah, you're putting him in, you're putting Keenan Allen in, and then Rome Odunze is a flex option in the end. If Moore was out, then I'd say really stock up and upgrade Odunze this week. But if Moore's in there, I think it really goes to him and Keenan Allen over Rome Odunze this week.
Yeah, it's fair. And Keenan Allen is going to play this week, and so that was a determination there as well. So, yeah, I agree with you on all fronts. And then as far as the Swift side of it goes, yeah, you're rolling Swift out there. I don't know that you're playing Travis Homer based on the news that Swift should be okay to go. But also we don't know how banged up Swift actually is. So we'd keep an eye on a potential ones to watch, we'll say, for Travis Homer, especially with Roschon Johnson already out of it. Caleb, to me, is a super flex option, but nothing more than that. And we've seen him be able to spread the ball, and we've seen the ability, but I don't know that it warrants a start in a one quarterback league.
Yeah, it's still on the road, still in San Fran, still hasn't put up. I mean, he's put up good numbers recently, but it just consistently, I don't know if I can trust him in a huge week like this, even with some of the bye weeks. I think that's the only reason would be the bye weeks to put him into a one quarterback. But that's really and another good 425 game here.
Yeah, certainly so. And let's jump to Sunday Night Football, where the Chargers will travel to Kansas City and take on Patrick Mahomes. Zach, for the Chiefs, I think it's very easy. It's kind of just the same start your guys that we've been playing here. But I think the bigger question mark on their side of things is outside of those couple guys, Hopkins and Kelsey and Mahomes, the running back situation is sort of very up in air here. In Mageddon, which one of these two guys are you starting?
1,000%, Brett. I would say if I had to pick between the two, I'd say Pacheco. However, this is one of those where it's like, all right, well, kind of display your options, and you see the work in this committee, that it's a little hard to actually, like, I don't know, like maybe trust either of these guys. I know if you have to pick one and just kind of roll with it, I would give the edge to Pacheco heading into this week, but I think this one is almost split. So that's interesting, and obviously by committee, you're kind of picking and choosing here. They're also going up against a solid Chargers defense. So for all those reasons, it's a little bit murky. I'd say all those guys that you mentioned, the Hopkins, Kelsey, and Mahomes of the world are in your lineup. Those two, I'm really having a hard time trusting. I feel like either one of them this week, Brett.
Yeah, certainly fair. I think that this week, I don't know that I can truly believe in Pacheco and a Hunt. Chargers defense has been just good against the run as well, and so not sure what the weather report is going to be like tonight. A lot of things in Sunday Night Football, Kansas City in December, and where we've seen some of the most freezing games in history there. And so all to be taken with a grain of salt. But as far as the two of them, I think Mageddon, if I had to pick one, because there's a bunch of teams, including one in our league, that have both of these guys. I'd play Pacheco over Kareem Hunt. On the other side of the ball, Justin Herbert has been pretty good this last bunch of weeks, and I think that warrants a consideration in Mageddon for one of those fill-in options here as quarterback one. And if not, then you're playing him in a super flex league at least. I would say that Kamani Vidal also has sort of factored himself into the workload here with Gus Edwards, and so both of them to me are probably flex plays, not more than that though this week. Lad McConkey, you're playing him without a doubt. Probably a high-end wide receiver too. And Johnston, I believe, also warrants some flex consideration for this week in Mageddon. And Will Dissly has been a stud, has been just kind of the go-to, and sort of has filled in that Gerald Everett role that we saw for the last bunch of years here as a tight end one.
Yeah, 100%. And it was kind of surprising, Brett. And I picked Will Dissly in one of our later segments, and all of a sudden I'm trying to remember last week, and I remember he put up a big fat goose egg, a nice 0 last week on one target. But I'll say in that game, I mean, Atlanta, they were going up against it, and Lad McConkey had a day and a half. So I really can't fault Will Dissly for that one game there in Atlanta. I'm still believing in him. I know people are like, 0 points, out of my lineup, done, never again kind of deal. Will Dissly's going to get his targets. Don't worry. McConkey got the big day last week, and really it ultimately fell to just one target for Dissly for no catches. But he's, especially in a big bye week this week, he's a guy to definitely continue to have on your radar.
Certainly fair. And Zach, let's jump to Monday Night Football as the Dallas Cowboys take on the Cincinnati Bengals. And Zach, it's been a rocky road for the Dallas Cowboys here in the last bunch of weeks here. CeeDee Lamb, we had a question early on in this show about CeeDee Lamb. I think you just have to play your studs. And I understand the concern with Cooper Rush being the quarterback there, but I'm not shying away from playing him. Rico Dowdle has been very good with the workload, and so he goes right into the lineup. And then I would say Jake Ferguson right now in this week. We are considering different guys to go in. Jake Ferguson, for me, is a guy that warrants a consideration to be started at tight end.
Yep, agreed on all fronts. Ferguson, Dowdle, and Lamb for the Cowboys. And in a matchup, Cincinnati's secondary has been horrible. So, they could have that boom potential, any one of those guys this week. So, that should be an interesting one on Monday night. Brett, I'll bring it to the other side. Simply, in this one, I'll say it. We say it every week. Start your guys in Cincinnati. They are, although they continue to lose games, they continue to put up fantasy points. So you're happy about that. And continue to roll with your guys. Burrow, Chase Brown. Then you got your guys in Higgins and Chase this week. And I mean, those four guys just put up monster numbers, continue to put up monster numbers. And when you're looking at that, then you're saying, all right, well, how can I go away from it? So all four of those guys really in the mix and a good matchup against Dallas. I think the Cowboys defense, they've been a bit better and you've kind of seen glimpses of, all right, well, maybe they're a little bit back to normal on defense. I think when you look at those games, you go, oh, well, they were against the NFC East. And I know the Commanders are good this year, but a divisional game, anything can happen there. I think Cincinnati really will give the Cowboys a hard time here. I'm expecting a high-scoring game. This should be a fun one on Monday night, Brett.
Yeah, Mr. Batmobile himself, Joe Burrow, certainly can put in a big performance here against the Dallas Cowboys, who have just basically kind of being kicked when they're down right now by the rest of the NFL. Could continue here this week. That said, Burrow is obviously a must start, as are the two stud receivers in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Brown as well is a start. And I don't know that I am starting anybody else in the lineup. Mike Gesicki for sure, definitely not starting him. Saw some buzz on social media about him this week. I'm staying away from it. In one thing that Dallas is good at, it's defending against the tight end. They're not really that great at anything else, but they are good at defending against the tight end. And so certainly staying away from Mike Gesicki, who hasn't been that good to begin with this year.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Zach, let's go to the home stretch here with our lock of the week and ones to watch. We start out with the lock of the week. And for you, last week, you took Rachaad White to my Darnell Mooney. Rachaad White finishes with 8.8 PPR points to Darnell Mooney's 5 PPR points. So you take the lead 6-5 here in the standings. And it's your turn to pick guys who are outside of the top 20 in consensus rankings.
Yeah, and I kind of had to look at my phone twice when I saw this guy. I was like, it's really outside the top 20, even on a bye week too. Like bye weeks with all these guys and some of these top 11s. I know he's been bad. Like I know he hasn't been the same guy that we've seen all along. How in the world, Brett, is Tyreek Hill ranked outside the top 20? I understand it's been a bad year and you're a Hill owner right now. Like, even so, I mean, this guy can go for 30 any day he wants if he really went after it. And I look at it in the end, guess who they're playing? They're playing our New York Jets, Brett. So I'm expecting a massive week. And Sauce Gardner, you just said it a little while ago, he's out for this one. That leaves some room for Tyreek Hill to put some work in. And for that reason, I think Tyreek Hill has a boom week this week and one that you probably need. I know, obviously, us as Jet fans, but fantasy playoffs coming down or fantasy stretch into the playoffs coming down to the wire. I think you would be pretty happy with a Tyreek Hill boom week this week. So I'm going with him. I'm hoping that he gets the job done for you this week. And it's just crazy to me still that he's outside the top 20.
A man can hope. Right? I think that Tyreek has had his struggles this year, but I think the entire Dolphins team has sort of had the struggle this year. And so you kind of hope for the boom weeks. And, I think back to the nighttime game on Thanksgiving, he caught one that was deflected and he ends up scoring a touchdown. It ends up being a really, really big game for him. That said, my guy is actually Khalil Shakir, who has finished with double-digit fantasy points in 5 of the last 6 weeks. Again, he has been just the number one stud in this Buffalo offense that is continuing to roll. Like I said, the secondary on the Rams is not that great. This could end up being a shootout. And so why not take the upside of a Khalil Shakir?
Yeah, 100% agree. And weak defense out in Los Angeles. So should be a solid week once again for Khalil Shakir.
All right, so now we go to our ones to watch, and these are guys we think will end up being a waiver target next week and are owned in 50% or less than 50% of leagues. And last week, I took Tank Bigsby, who finished with 4.5 PPR points. Zach, you took Will Dissly going on that tight end streak, who finished with a whopping 0. And listen, I still think that what we talked about, he's playing against Kansas City, you still got to play him. But yeah, it wasn't a good output for Will Dissly. You kind of picked him on the wrong week. And so I take a 7-4 lead here in the ones to watch, as we've kind of now righted our ships, where you take the lock of the weeks and I take the ones to watch, as was pretty much the standard in last year's blowout wins for both of us. And so for me, I am actually gonna zag when everybody else is zigging. Breece Hall gets ruled out this week, and looks like he could potentially be out for the rest of the year. Jets not really in contention right now. They're still mathematically alive, but it's going to take they'd have to win out and get help. And so for me, I think that it's probably best that they shut down Breece Hall, and it's a conversation that they'll have over the next few weeks here. But everybody's going after Braylon Allen, and I can understand where people are like, oh, well, he's the number 2, and it's so quick to go there. But last week they used Isaiah Davis in a way that was so different than they used Braylon Allen when Breece Hall was there. And so being able to use him within the 20-yard line, getting touchdowns, things like that, he did get his first touchdown of his career. So I think there's more to come, and I think we'll start to see that a bit today in just under an hour. So for me, Isaiah Davis actually is the more appealing guy, a guy who in college was a workhorse back and was able to continuously get over 20 carries. And so for me, when they picked both of these guys, it was certainly intriguing. That said, I'm actually going with Isaiah Davis, who's only owned in 7% of leagues.
Yeah, definitely fair, Brett. And obviously you said more likely to get a touchdown today, Isaiah Davis, over a guy like Braylon Allen. So definitely a good pick there. And for me, I'm going with a guy that it's almost chalk at this point in my mind, but he's still owned in under 50% of leagues. He's owned in 42% of leagues. That's Nick Westbrook-Akine, who's on this crazy stretch of touchdowns right now and continues to put up big plays and fantasy points in the end. I think when you're looking at the stretch of the playoffs, and we talked about it before, Brett, it's like dropping the guys that you're probably just not going to put in your lineup for guys that probably have some more upside in the end and maybe just have the possibility for boom weeks. We looked at Will Levis before I talked about it. I'm going to look at Westbrook-Akine here, who has that same easy schedule coming down the stretch. You got Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, and Jacksonville again. I mean, that's a great stretch for the playoffs. So that's why I'm looking at Westbrook-Akine. He could have another touchdown today. We'll see what happens against Jacksonville to continue to keep that touchdown streak rolling. But another guy that just, keep him on the radar, and we look for the boom potential coming towards postseason time, that's a guy that I'm seeing here in this Nick Westbrook-Akine, owned in 42% of leagues.
Yeah, listen, I know that we talked about it, when we were talking about the Titans game, but, boom bust, it can get down the field very quickly. And, I think that he does have the potential to have a pretty big boom week. And, again, I think that both of these guys have the opportunity to factor in very heavily. I want to just quickly pull up a quote here from Jeff Ulbricht's press conference here. When he got asked about Isaiah Davis, he said, quote, "When guys earn the opportunity to play, we're absolutely going to give them an opportunity to play. They're one of the better practice players I've ever been around, ever. Player coach in my 20-plus years in this league. It's a great opportunity to reward great behavior, especially in times like these. The more opportunities you're going to see, the more special stuff you're going to see from Isaiah. I really believe he's got some special qualities. I think he's the best outside zone runner on our team. I think he's got an amazing ability out of the backfield as far as the receiver is concerned, elite traits as far as movement. The more he starts to really learn this game and all the nuance and details that a veteran guy has, the better version of him we're going to see. I'm so excited about Isaiah in his future in this league. And I'm excited to get all three of our backs getting involved." That was said before Breece Hall got ruled out. And so, yeah, very, very high praise there from Jeff Ulbrich for Isaiah Davis. And that's sort of why I'm zagging when everyone's zigging.
Yeah, could be interesting. And obviously, you said it, high praise from Ulbrich. And we'll see what happens this week as the Jets take on the Dolphins.
Yeah, and I think that in what is just this big Mageddon week, everybody's sort of making these sort of decisions, and starting a guy who is owned in only 7% of leagues was my decision. Certainly a crazy one, and obviously kind of the name of the game here as we roll ourselves into a potential last week of the regular season. Again, some teams are in playoffs right now with the byes, and that's just crazy. I think that, in general, we'll start to see as more get added to the NFL schedule, which Roger Goodell has said that he wants to do in the future. We will start to see those bye weeks sort of go past, and we won't see playoffs or end of season start to come into play, especially as, fantasy and the betting community is taking this bigger step forward, as we've seen here in the last handful of years. Yeah,
100%. And obviously, something to keep an eye on as we go down the stretch here, and a lot of decisions to be made, and obviously get to do it again next week. But this week, man, it's just it's going to be a close one here. We're coming down the stretch, obviously last week of the regular season, and I mean, we're almost there in terms of playoff time. Just got to get the teams in.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy, and yeah, you kind of just gotta pray for the high floor, and for the even higher ceiling here in Mageddon week 14. We'll be back next week to break it all down and then preview what will be the fantasy playoffs for the bulk of leagues in week 15. Subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you get, give us the thumbs up. And in the words of Aaron Rodgers, tonight is darkest before the dawn, we shall rise yet again. Zach Malvin, I'm Brett Malvin. This has been the Third Round Reversal Fantasy Football Podcast. We will catch you on the next one.